Hello everyone and welcome. Thank you for attending our on-demand webinar, Use NIR and Feed to Manage Variability in Raw Materials. This on-demand webinar is sponsored by FOSS and presented by Watt Global Media. Hello, my name is Jackie Remke, editor of Feed Management and Feed International magazines, and I'll be your moderator. Before we get started, I would like to note that this webinar has been previously recorded and is made available to view as an archive thanks to our sponsor, FOSS. Please feel free to view this archive as many times as you would like. Also note that we are currently scheduling more live webinars for 2018. To register for upcoming webinars or to view on-demand webinars on related topics, please visit www.wattagnet.com/webinars. Our sponsor for today is FOSS. FOSS creates end-to-end solutions that secure and improve food quality, from raw material to finished product. Their analysis instruments refine measurements into information management that enables businesses to run intelligent, data-driven productions with less waste and bigger yields. Controlling costs and quality across all sectors and value chains, FOSS helps food and agricultural producers limit the number of human errors, scale their business faster, and reduce manual labor as well as labor costs. FOSS covers the following food and agricultural industries: dairy, feed and forage, grain, flour milling and oilseed processing, laboratories, meat, raw milk testing, and wine. For more information on products and services offered by FOSS, please visit www.fossanalytics.com. Our speakers for today are Karsten Dennison and Andy LaFollette. Karsten Dennison joined FOSS as the Global Market Manager for Feed and Forage in 2015. He works globally with FOSS Solutions for the feed and forage industry, ensuring that they address the most important issues. Karsten has worked for more than 10 years in the agricultural and biotech sector. He received his master's in environmental engineering from the Technical University of Denmark in 1995. He also holds an MBA from the University of Cambridge. Andy LaFollette is a native Iowan currently living near Iowa City. He holds a chemistry degree and a few football scars from the University of Northern Iowa. His 19 years of work experience with feed ingredient quality include roles in laboratory, nutrition formulation, regulatory, NIR network manager, data management systems, oilseed process analytics, and food safety. Currently, Andy is in key account management with a focus on customers in feed, grain milling, oilseeds, and oil.
Welcome to this webinar on how to use NIR to manage variability in your raw materials for animal feed. My name is Karsten Dennison and I'm the Global Market Manager for Feed and Forage in FOSS. I'm joined by my colleague Andy LaFollette, who's our Key Account Manager managing the major accounts within feed and forage globally. At this webinar, we will try to cover a discussion on variation challenges in feed production, how to NIR data is beneficial to ingredient quality control, and show an example on soybean meal for that, and then finally go through the elements of a good NIR solution and introduce FOSS Feed Plus. But first, Andy will talk about variation challenges in feed production.
Let's start by talking about variation as it relates to feed and feed ingredients. Process performance monitoring uses rules and limits to define standard or natural occurring variation based on continuous monitoring at control points. Ingredient receiving is a perfect example of a feed control point. Outliers, special cause variation, and out-of-spec results are when it is critically important to take action to avoid potentially big losses. Preventable losses differ from price fluctuations in commodities. In some instances, they introduce risk to food safety, personal safety, and property. Preventable losses may negatively impact storage, production, and animal health and nutrition. With NIR instrumentation, The ability to measure more samples will give you enhanced monitoring for your key ingredients. NIR is an easy and effective tool for reducing variation, proactively improving regulatory conformance and labeling accuracy, safeguarding your production and uptime, and supplying data for feed formulation accuracy and profitability. While safety margins limit swings of over and under formulation of nutrients, they can also limit cost advantages if not supported by data and actions that control or improve variation in your feeds. This example shows two different levels of standard deviation for soybean meal that is in spec on average. The allowances are determined by the American Oil Chemists Society and the National Oilseed Producers Association and are the basis for lab accreditation performance criteria. Soybeans and manufacturing both contribute to variation of soybean meal. Producers are generally pushing average quality close to the spec to improve meal yield and production rate. Statistically, with standard deviation and average, we can show a percentage of out-of-spec ingredient. Protein in spec at 47.1 with a standard deviation of 0.9% statistically has 37% of shipments below 47.0, which is less than the guaranteed level of 47.5 in this example, minus the allowance for protein of 0.5. In the case of fiber, at the bottom of the table, an in-spec result of 3.7 with a standard deviation of 0.3 statistically has 32% of shipments above 3.8, which is higher than the guaranteed level plus the allowance. Each parameter has an assigned claim value for every 0.1% of deficiency. Fiber or crude fiber has the highest award for soybean meal. For U.S. soybean meal, 30 to 40% of shipments may be out of spec. That represents 5 out of every 15 possible deliveries having some amount of claim discount to the buyer. The price per ton and the total shipment weight determine the claim awarded per parameter deficiency. The total deficiency is qualified when the quality is determined to be beyond the allowance and the penalty is set by the guaranteed spec. Small deficiencies beyond the allowance add up by shipment, and greater than $100,000 US annually is realized by mid-sized feed mills today through soybean meal claims with preferred suppliers.
So as Andy has just demonstrated, the key to improved profitability and raw material control is to monitor all ingoing deliveries. But how do you achieve this? If you are using a reference laboratory today, you know that each analysis has a cost, and in addition, sending samples easily takes 3 to 5 days. So by the time you receive the results from the laboratory, the raw materials are already fed to the animals. This is why feed producers around the world are switching to NIR for their raw material analysis. But what is the basis of NIR? Well, in short, near-infrared light, so light outside the visible spectrum, is directed at the sample. The light is modified by the sample and reflected back to the detector in the instrument. The spectra recorded is then converted into results related to the sample composition. This conversion is done mathematically using a calibration. So the accuracy of the result depends both on the NIR instrument performance and quality, but also the quality of the calibration and the number of samples in the calibration. If you want to know more about NIR, then please visit fossanalytics.com and go to the Trends and Insights section. So by switching to NIR, what is the impact on your operation? Well, first of all, it's control at the gate. So NIR is just one simple analysis in less than 1 minute. It means that you can analyze all your incoming and outgoing deliveries. You'll get immediate on-site results, so the ability to stop poor raw materials at the gate without having a long line of trucks being held up. And you have time to segregate your raw materials into different qualities. Increased sampling frequency without increasing cost. There's no direct cost of analysis for pushing the button on your NIR equipment. So as your business grows, your cost of analysis will be stable. Once inside production, it's about improving profit. Firstly, by managing claims. So you have documented the quality of all your incoming raw materials. So now you can see trends and identify supplier issues. You can make claims for all raw materials that are below specifications, as described in the previous section by Andy. And you can avoid being the target of poor quality raw materials. The fastest effect we see when implementing NIR is that suppliers know that you are checking and that they will start to send their lower quality elsewhere. Finally, you can use your results for least cost formulation. So you can substitute costly raw materials like soy meal with lower cost alternatives such as corn, based on the actual nutrient content. So if you receive raw materials that are better than the specification, then you can use that to lower the cost of the final product. So can I just buy one of those blue instruments and start scanning? Well, you do need an instrument that can detect the different chemical components, and you need software and an internet connection. But in addition, you need to have a calibration translating the scan from the instrument into nutrient values. This calibration has to be specific to the individual sample type, and it is built from chemical reference analysis. You can only measure what you have calibrations for. With raw materials changing over the season and the feed formulation constantly being optimized, you need, on a regular basis, to validate your calibrations and match your samples, validate that your calibrations match your samples and that the instrument is working correctly. Let us talk a little more on how to develop calibrations. If you start from scratch, you basically need to collect samples from your raw materials and final feed. These samples need to be representative for the variation in your raw materials. So if you're using soy meal with a protein content that varies between 40 and 55%, you need samples to cover that variation. These samples will then have to be scanned on an instrument and sent for reference analysis. By matching the scan and the chemical analysis, a chemometrician can build a calibration predicting the results. As you may hear, this is time-consuming, and the reference analysis represents quite an investment. That is why FOSS have built a set of ready-to-use calibrations to get you started right away. FOSS global ANN calibrations are comprised of thousands of samples and a large variety of raw materials from around the globe. Therefore, you can use new types of raw materials and source from new locations without changing or updating the calibration. What you need in terms of calibrations for feed production is primarily your vegetable ingredients, so vegetable byproducts, cereals and grains, and vegetable protein meals. To control your final product, you need a compound feed calibration, both for ground and unground feed. And finally, you would normally need calibration for some of the animal byproducts, such as feather meal or blood meal, or what is used in your final feed. Using NIR, for each analysis you will make, you will get 6 parameters, both protein, moisture, fat, ash, fiber, and starch, to represent the nutrient value of your raw materials and your final feed. So if this sounds a little complicated, FOSS have made it possible to start right away without any specific NIR competences by developing the FOSS Feed Plus service, a package which includes everything you need to get started. At the heart of the solution is the DS2500F, our latest innovation for the feed sector, using highly accurate optical NIR technology to give the best possible performance. In addition, you will get a suite of FOSS ANA calibrations cover your analysis need within compound feed, vegetable feed ingredients, and animal byproducts. You will get a quarterly calibration performance validation and calibration updates according to ISO to ensure consistency and quality. And our application specialist will remotely monitor your instrument online so that ensure that it's always up and running and working correctly. In addition, you'll get warranty during the program with on-site support in case of instrument breakdown. We have partnered with Dairyland Laboratories to ensure calibration validation through a trusted third party. Dairyland Laboratories will handle sample and calibration validation as well as conduct the reference analysis. So if you want to try whether NIR has the right benefits for you, it's time to sign up. You can start talking to a FOSS representative to assess your analysis and sampling needs. What you need to do is prepare 2 sets of samples and send them to Dairyland. Dairyland will then confirm the calibration support performance of the FOSS calibrations and see that they match your sample types. After that, you'll receive a call from a FOSS application specialist to confirm which calibrations to use and how to set up your instrument and your online services. A FOSS customer service representative will install the instrument and train you in basic use, and then finally you are ready to start scanning your samples and benefit from using NIR. On a quarterly basis, you will need to send a small set of samples to Dairyland so that we continuously validate that our calibrations are up to date or update them if needed. So it's really about getting started, install the instrument, and then obtain consistent performance. That was all that we wanted to cover, so thank you very much for attending this webinar on using NIR to take control of your feed raw materials. If you want to know more, please visit fossanalytics.com or contact the FOSS office. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank all of our attendees today for taking the time to listen to this archive. This on-demand webinar will continue to be available to view on www.wattagnet.com/webinars. To register for upcoming webinars or to access on-demand webinars on related topics, please visit www.wattagnet.com/webinars. We'd also like to thank our sponsor FOSS for their participation. For more information on products and services offered by FOSS, please visit www.fossanalytics.com. Finally, we'd like to extend a big thanks to the speakers for their time. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great day.